and authors use it as a kind of a shorthand for any sort of creature that appears like this.
This thing is pissed!
Toby Otero directs and co-writes The Rake Investigation. Now, this is actually part of a loosely connected horror comedy universe. The makers of this film have previously made a kind of Sasquatch movie and a mermaid movie, and the connective tissue in these films is a kind of cryptozoologist who is investigating various sightings of creatures, and this third movie concentrates on the Rake. Now, they are kind of able to be watched on their own. You don't need to have watched the previous two movies. They are a connected universe, but maybe not necessarily sequels. And I believe there's actually a fourth movie coming out at some point as well, and I suspect long will it continue. So this is a very, very low budget horror comedy, and this one is actually done in a little bit of a different style. This one is done in more of a mockumentary style, almost not exactly a found footage, but they are creating this TV show, you know, and the majority of this footage is either interviews with people associated with this program, or it is some found footage, but also there are just regular film style scenes as well. So what's the story? It focuses on this crew of investigators, one of which is a doctor, and we have a couple of other people as well, various cameramen, ultimately survivors from the previous movies, and new kind of crew members and stuff that get added to it. And they kind of want to get rich, get recognised through actually proving scientifically that these kind of cryptids actually exist. And although they've captured footage twice before, the mermaid and the kind of the Bigfoot situations, they've never actually got a live subject. And this is their mission with this one. In the Rake, which is a kind of sort of skinless type creature that kind of runs around and stuff in the woods. So that's what they intend to do, and that is where our story starts. So let's talk about it. What works in this movie's favour? Now again, before we go any further, this is a very, very low budget movie. Now, I know the previous two movies were low budget. The second one I think had a bit of a higher budget, because I actually got sent these screeners by the filmmakers. But this one looks to be by far the lowest budget, and it feels to me like somewhat of a gonzo film. As in, it's kind of just like somewhat improvised. That's how the impression I get with it. So the movie is a kind of comedy, and there are a couple of like over the top characters, and there are a few funny lines here. It's all kind of like bro humor is the best way I would kind of describe it. But we have sort of slightly kind of over-the-top sort of characters who are, you know, being kind of like outrageous at times and kind of like deliberately sort of controversial. And there are a few times here where I think the movie does hit a few funny jokes here and there. When we get into the actual kind of monster hunt itself, again, it's extremely low budget, and they've elected to use like a guy made up to be the Rake. And the costume is rudimentary, let me just say, but I do think there are, when you kind of see it briefly or slightly obscured, I think it's somewhat effective. And what this movie does have is an amount of kind of like over-the-top violence where arms are getting ripped off, you know, heads are getting punched off, things like that. And, you know, again, this is achieved practically, albeit in kind of, you know, low-budget gore, but it's still kind of quite fun. And the movie was always trying to have this kind of like this lighter tone, this kind of like sense of kind of over the top sort of satire and stuff like that on these kind of various internet kind of paranormal shows and things that, you know, we've seen plenty of times on YouTube and on TV and things like that. The movie is quite short. It only runs about sort of 75 minutes, and there is a sort of a stinger for a kind of a next adventure at the end of the kind of the movie. So you know, obviously, if you kind of you're interested in your cryptids and things like that, it looks like obviously each kind of episode, so to speak, is dealing with a different one, and they do reference the previous movies, and there is a continuity in it. But I think it's not like you have to see the other ones. They kind of like they just kind of talk about it like another sort of episode that they filmed and things like that. So it does have a degree of watchability if you haven't seen the previous movies. So this is, I believe, starting streaming in July of 2025, I should point out. So what doesn't work? So as I've said, this whole series is very low budget, but to me this looks like the lowest budget of the lot. So much so that it almost feels like this was kind of shot on the fly. Now, this is my speculation only. The movie has a relatively scant running time of around 75 minutes, including credits. 45 minutes of this movie, the initial 45 minutes, is this crew arguing about various kind of disagreements in the group and egos clashing and things like that. So 45 minutes of people arguing, and then, you know, the remainder is the hunt for the rake. The rake really doesn't show up until after, you know, that, and they almost immediately find it. Now, the first 45 minutes, as I say, is just dialogue driven. It's a mixture of interviews with you know, these people on this mockumentary and various kind of like shots of these guys arguing in the woods. And I think this is obviously designed to be character building, but I didn't really feel like there was any like arc in the characters. It's this a block of 45 minutes of people arguing, and it's not like characters had growth or did anything in that time. It was just 45 minutes of people arguing. That is it, but with no like forward momentum on the plot, no forward momentum on sort of character development or anything like that. The status quo is exactly the same as at the end of that 45 minutes than at the beginning. So it was way overstretched. And also the way the dialogue was given, it seems like it's improvised to me, or at least partially improvised. This is why I feel this movie is why I say it feels like it was filmed on the fly. It just seems like these guys are just spinning their wheels. Now, on a big budget version of this, the Thor Love and Thunder, I know that they were just filming things to have a laugh with, and as a result, that movie, they enjoyed making it, but they thought it was, the audiences weren't too keen on it. And as much as this movie might have been fun to make through this kind of cast and stuff, there's really no story in this. There's just no story. At least the other two films actually had a plot. This one doesn't. It just doesn't have a plot. You've got 45 minutes of people arguing, and then the remainder of the time, people in the woods hunting a rake, and that's it. It's like two scenes, really, massively extended scenes. So you know, it's not the most interesting or gripping story. I understand you might have had 10 minutes of this to gather that obviously there's conflict within the group. I get it. 10 minutes of that we could have done with, and then you could have had the rake attacking, you know, other people or things like that, or other ways that you could have developed the characters. But that's not what they did. And then let's talk about the rake sequences, which, as I say, is the kind of like the kind of the end 2/5 of this movie. And the rake sections are more fun. At least there's stuff going on. But again, there's not really a lot of story here. It's just these people in the woods, like various kind of like trying to capture or kill this rake. And the rake is literally a guy painted white with a skull mask on and a pair of like white shorts. You know, it isn't high tech stuff. This, as I say, I think there are fun sequences, especially when you don't see as much of the rake and you kind of see it in glimpses or briefly. I still kind of quite liked it, I have to say. But you know, in the cold hard light day, obviously this appears to be super low budget. So this is going to be for fans of just gonzo cinema, Z-grade kind of horror. It has an element of fun, but even then I don't think all the jokes hit. As I said, there are some funny lines in it, but you know, when you have these characters just talking and talking and talking for like so long, and you throw so much shit at the wall, some of it's going to stick, but a lot of it doesn't, and a lot of it just feels like you don't really know these characters and you don't really connect with them, and the jokes are kind of like, yeah, we get it, this guy's like a braggart and stuff like that, and he's like he's kind of just full of himself. We get it, we don't need masses of time to be dedicated to that, and it's not interesting. So this, to me, at the 3 movies that we've had so far, I have to say was the weakest. And it could have had, I think it could have had an interesting story. If they just spent a little bit more time on the story and less time piss-arsing around on screen, then I think you could have had more of an interesting movie. And it seems goofier than the other 2. Even though the other 2 were both comical, this one seems goofier, especially from our kind of like doctor, science character. I don't know, he seemed like more juvenile in this one. It's a 3 out of 10 for me. Have you seen it? Would you see it? Please do let me know your thoughts, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.